Humans are half decent at actually losing weight, but where we really struggle is keeping the weight off long term. And in today's presentation, I just want to cover, first of all, some behaviors you're probably already doing, or at least weight maintenance behaviors I've talked about before. And then we're going to cover some ones that potentially we haven't thought about before. So first of all, keeping a high protein diet, we know that leads to increased satiety and benefits in terms of reducing spontaneous calorie consumption. So over 1.6 grams per kilo of body weight is a good amount to maintain long term. Water with each meal. Couple of studies. This one basically gave people 500 mils of water right before they had a meal, and they reduced calorie intake by 10% on average, which is a large reduction in intake from a meal. Now that may adjust over time, you may get used to that, but at least it's a good habit to begin putting in place. Regular meal rhythm, so having a set meal time and sticking to that. Okay, I'm having 3 meals per day, they're at these times, and that's going to just lead to better regulation of appetite and satiety throughout the day, and just having some kind of structure in place so you don't have to make as many decisions. Maintaining increased physical activity, one that I go on about all the time. Maintaining lifting of 3 times a week is probably a good thing to do long term. And then, of course, the big behaviors of weight maintainers long term. These are people that maintain their weight loss 1 to 3 years after an intervention, or maintain at least kind of 5 to 10% of that weight loss, I should say. 7,000 steps per day plus is probably a good goal for most people to attain. A stable but flexible dietary pattern, so we're talking about having no foods off limits, focusing on lower energy density foods, your high volume, low calorie vegetables, fruits, single ingredient foods, so foods that aren't sort of in a package or mixed with a whole bunch of other ingredients, and then your basic meal structure. You're kind of looking at that plate model, having a protein in the middle, low calorie vegetables around it, whole grains, having that all in place, easy to track, and an easy one to, repeat long term. Some level of self-monitoring is probably important. So to actually monitor whether these behaviors are actually working or not, or whether you're maintaining weight, probably some level of monitoring scale weight is important. Now, some behaviors that you may not do. This is what this presentation is mainly about. Is I was looking through a presentation recently from Eric Helms, who I've had on the podcast multiple times, talking about exactly this. Behaviors that help people maintain body composition. Some interesting ones that maybe we haven't thought about before. So let's start off: eating intentionally at restaurants and mindfully at home. This one actually I'm going to cover. Predominantly. Eating that. Yeah, we'll cover both. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud here. Chewing 15 versus 50 in this study. So chewing 15 times versus 50 times. Basically, the people who chewed 50 times reduced their intake of that meal substantially, and over the course of the study, lost more body weight. Basically, we're allowing time for those satiety signals to actually make themselves present to us and actually help us to decide when to stop eating. So if we can slow our eating down by chewing 50 times versus 15, we're going to have a much better control of our intake in that meal. Now, not to say you have to chew 50 times. Maybe you can chew 20 times. Start counting that a few times and then getting used to eating a little bit slower. Also, a great chance to be mindful with your eating and really savor the flavors, savor the meal, enjoy that as much as you can. A big one also is people eat processed foods far faster, which often leads to increased calorie consumption from packaged foods. So a great one, if you are eating something a little more processed, is to slow it down and chew as many times as you can. And of course, at least you're going to get some better nutrient absorption from that as well. Distraction-free meals, I've talked about this one multiple times, trying to have one of these per day if you can. A study where they had some participants play a video game while eating lunch, others didn't play the video game, and then they gave them cookies afterwards and basically monitored how much they ate, and then also asked them about their how full they felt and a whole bunch of other kind of objective markers or subjective markers. So the video game study, the people who played the video game, they ate way more cookies after lunch because they were less satiated from their meal because they were distracted. They also couldn't remember the order of the meal and were generally just distracted, from playing the video game. So if you want to reduce your calorie intake and also have better satiety effects from that meal, practice distraction-free eating. Practice not watching a podcast, or sorry, not listening to a podcast, not watching TV, not on your phone, and try to just enjoy that food. And also, you can use that time to practice your chewing. Modify how you buy. So making a list when you go to the grocery store, don't deviate from that list. Avoid the temptations of specials and things like that. Avoid buying those jumbo packs and large quantities that you actually don't need. So go in there with an idea of what you want to buy and buy that for yourself rather than giving into the marketing. Those supermarkets are structured in a way to get us to buy more than we went in there to get in the first place. And we all fall victim to these tactics. Don't take the free samples. Generally, they're not going to be vegan anyway, so we're probably going to be okay in that situation. And then modifying how you prepare your food is another good one. So deciding the amount of food that is appropriate for you or the people that you're cooking for. Serve that amount and then put the rest away, especially when it comes to packaged foods. If you're leaving that packaged food out on the counter or on the table, even if it's things like sauces or breads and stuff, and you're leaving them on the table, people are just going to keep going. Put them away, serve the amount you need, put the rest away. Don't stockpile. I really loved this one. Really cool behavior. Don't buy a whole bunch of tempting foods for future events, parties, things like this, or unexpected visitors, and keep them in the house. If they're there in the house, they're going to be eating. So don't stockpile. Don't store them in the center console of your car or the glove box or in the drawer at your office, because again, if they're there, they're going to be eaten. And if you're having these tempting foods, they're tempting for you in the house, try to store them out of sight, number one, and even out of reach. And maybe then put them in the highest cupboard or in the garage somewhere where you can't reach them. That way, when you kind of think, oh, yeah, I want that thing, you can go and grab it. Oftentimes, people choose not to because they can't be bothered. Or you're going to just be much more intentional about, having that, pack of vegan Kit Kats or whatever it may be, okay? Number 4, modify how you eat out. So this one is basically deciding in advance before you go out to a restaurant or a takeaway how much you're going to eat, and then serve this amount and then place the rest away. So, if you're getting takeaway, eat the amount that you determined you're going to eat beforehand, and then close the lid, place it out of sight, decide I am done. Try sharing one meal between two if you're on a lower calorie diet and you still want to eat out, or try sharing 2 meals between 3. I like doing that as well. That way you get to try a whole bunch of different meals, but you also reduce your total intake. And then when there's a choice of portion size, you might just choose the smaller option. So those are some cool strategies for eating out. Number 5 here, second to last, adopting non-eating stress relief, reward, and bonding behaviors. So things like, could you go for a walk instead of eating? Could you go for yoga, massage, go to the movies? Cooking can work here as well. It's a good bonding exercise, and of course you can control the ingredients or how calorically dense that meal is going to be. But adopting some behaviors that you do when you are stressed that aren't involving emotional eating. They're not involving, hey, let's get together for a meal, or let's get together for a drink or whatever. What else could you do that is stress relieving for you? And we all have different ways of relieving stress, but it's not revolved around eating. And then lastly here, a big one is about mindset. So reminding yourself of your long-term goals. Say them out loud, say them on a regular basis, or write them down in a journal. It's about our values. It's coming back to why we determine these goals in the first place. So why do you want to lose weight? What does it mean to you? Remind yourself that the process is not arbitrary. It's connected to your values. So, when you start thinking, oh, what's the point? You have to be able to go back to why you decided to do this in the first place. And if it's of a really deep value for you, like, okay, I have cardiovascular disease risk in my family, my mum died from it, whatever, that's going to be a big value of yours to come back to why you're choosing to eat this way. I want to be able to run around with my kids or with my dog or whatever it may be. So this is why I train, because I want to be healthy enough to do these things that are of value to me. They in this study here that I've shown down the bottom here, they compared standard behavioral treatment to acceptance-based therapy, which is basically this kind of idea of going back to your goals, back to your values, and then also here accepting that it will be uncomfortable. We're really good at doing things we don't like for delayed gratification. People go to jobs they don't like all the time, but because it's something that's going to bring them long-term benefit, They go to a job so they can earn money so that, long term, they can provide for their family, achieve their goals, whatever it may be. But we go to jobs we don't like because it's a delayed gratification. It gives us something in the future that we need. And so we need to apply that same thing to whether it's our nutrition or our training. Not all the time is it going to be fun. It's not always going to be enjoyable, and it will often be uncomfortable. But that's part of the journey of, I guess, delaying or going through something uncomfortable to delay gratification for something that we deem of value in the future. So in this particular study, the participants that did the acceptance-based therapy or treatment were able to drop more weight long-term, but also maintain that lower body weight long-term. So, it is coming back to the values of why we are doing this in the first place. So some cool behaviors here, guys, that you might not have thought about before. Maybe you want to screenshot this, have a look at these, implement them later. I really liked some of the things around chewing, distraction-free meals, the way we buy at supermarkets, so avoiding some of the specials and things like that. I often get tempted by those. And then, of course, another one about that stockpiling I really liked as well, is, not just having all these foods in the house waiting for the next event. So some lots of good things there. The last one I'll leave you with is, if you want to screenshot this one or pause this and read through some of these, from that last slide, all of those kind of behaviors were from a kind of a study or a meta-analysis of a whole bunch of things, behaviors that lead to long-term weight stability outcomes. And one of the big components was mindless eating, which I've talked about many times. So you can read through all of these things. The first one, don't eat or put food in your mouth because it's just there or because you passed by. So these are great little things you can read through. And a lot of these I've covered before, but avoid eating during work-related activities such as meetings, working at your desk, or making telephone calls. So these are really cool things you can start to implement. And I really love this mindful eating-based stuff and avoiding mindless eating. So guys, have a look at that. That's topic of the month for this month. And we will catch you next time.